The previous basket is under review.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Basket Under Review podcast. I am your host, Eamon Brennan of Buzzer at EamonBrennan.com. That's my newsletter. Go check it out. Also here of Basket Under Review, the best, coolest new college basketball website on the planet. We've got another great show for you this week, or hopefully a great show. We haven't recorded it yet. We'll see how it goes, but we'll let the audience decide. Our buddy Tate Frazier from The Ringer is back again. We are going to dissect in some detail the Charles Bediako Alabama situation that broke late last week, and that to me represents a kind of a new low in our modern NCAA. And in this case, maybe I don't even blame the NCAA so much. Our modern sort of college basketball eligibility landscape, to me, feels like a uniquely bad situation all around. And it was very interesting to see how the game played out Saturday night against Tennessee, and kind of what I gauged anyway from social media, stuck in my house preparing for a snowstorm, as the sort of response that happened, the way the off-court and on-court stuff kind of cross-stream. So we're going to get into all that. I have a lot of thoughts there. We're going to talk, obviously, a lot of ball as well. Great previous weekend, the marquee Saturday thus far of the conference season, I'd say, at least of the last month. Fantastic performances by some incredible freshmen, some great games, a lot of implications. Georgetown came from behind and won at Providence, and Providence fans are not happy about that, as you might imagine. So we'll get into that as well. Before we do all of that and much more besides, really quickly, as ever, I want to remind you, go to basketunderreview.com. $10 a month, you sign up, support independent college basketball media, where you make it so that we don't have to do shady ad deals or things that we're not comfortable with, and you can just do the content that we want to do and that people want to read, and that subscribers seem to be really responding to so far. For your $10 a month, you get access to read everything that's on the website behind the paywall, everything that's free. You get access to the Discord where Trilly Donovan breaks news, and there's thousands of paid subscribers in there chatting hoops pretty much 24/7. You also support this show and everything else we put out for free, and we really appreciate to everyone who subscribes. And if you haven't yet, go over, check us out, sign up, and get involved, because it's a great place to be for the college basketball season, especially as we get into the stretch run here. Also want to thank Home Field, our presenting sponsor, as ever. A very non-shady ad deal, an ad deal we're very happy to have. The Home Field folks are amazing. They crushed it all college football season. They're well into their college basketball stuff now. They've been doing their Home Field house tour actually for weeks, where they set up shop around the country at various arenas for big games, have a little pregame experience, a booth, place you can go buy stuff. They'll be at the Indiana-Bloomington game, probably weather permitting, tonight, Tuesday, the 27th, as you're listening to this. So if you're in Bloomington going to the game, go check out Home Field. People in Bloomington will be very familiar with Home Field. Tell them Basket Under Review sent you. Tell them that we love Home Field, and we're very appreciative that they sponsor our show. So thank you to Home Field, as ever, for being on board. Okay, Tate, spiel over. Podcast on. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing all right. You're on the East Coast. You got the ice storm happening, like you said. The action is heating up inside, but it is icy outside. It's the best of times in college basketball. We had a marquee Saturday. Had a lot of people reaching out to me I haven't heard from. You know what I mean? It feels like the page has finally turned into college basketball season. So for the general consensus, sports fan, quote unquote, they're locked in on college basketball. Get a lot of people, you got a lot of gamblers out there these days. Eamon, as you know, you mentioned the the people that are involved in the advertising space reaching out, asking me about games. So it's officially college basketball season. So it's good times, and very excited about all the performances. And I feel like, we have a lot to get to, because we got a big story with Bediako, and we also have just some incredible performances. I mean, I feel like this freshman class, I was going back through kind of like the seasons, trying to put together and piece together kind of the best freshman classes that we've had and performances that we've had. You don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but I feel like we're all right now incarcerated in the fact that this freshman class is incredible, and it's really hard to find one that is as deep as this freshman class. So I'm excited to talk about it all.
Yeah, for sure. And folks should know we're recording, as we usually do, late Monday evening. There's about 3.5 minutes left of the Duke-Louisville game as we're speaking. Duke ran away. We thought we might, record a little later if that game got fun, but then Duke pulled away in the second half, so we decided to hop on the mics and get it going. So maybe we'll do a little live commentary as we go with Arizona BYU. But if you don't hear a full breakdown of that, that's why. Just recording schedule conflict. But speaking of high-level freshmen, both games tonight, or Monday night, if you're listening to this Tuesday morning, which you probably will be, also in action tonight. So it's all happening. And yeah, I can't think of a time when a Saturday in college basketball, and I feel like I have a relatively good memory for these things, at least, the last 10, 15 years or so, where two guys scored 40 or more just in a day, let alone two freshmen. So it was really kind of an incredible day of basketball. And it culminated, obviously, with the Tennessee win at Alabama. That was preceded by a couple days of, like I said, what I think has essentially been kind of a low moment for in what has felt, I know, like to a lot of people, as a string of continually ever lower moments in the structure of modern college basketball and eligibility, and what it means to be eligible to be a college athlete in 2025 and 2026. I want to lay this out for folks because I think the context is important. And I want to make sure I get everybody's quotes right. I don't want to just paraphrase. So essentially the news broke, I want to say it was Thursday of last week, that Charles Bediako would be eligible to play for Alabama because a judge in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, had granted a temporary restraining order that made him immediately eligible to play, and also pretty much explicitly forbid the NCAA, at least until January 27th, from implying any penalties, imposing any penalties, doing anything about it, essentially. There was a lot of talk after this happened, and a lot of outrage, and a lot of people saying, why didn't the NCAA just make them, make these games not count for the NCAA tournament? It's like, well, that would be kind of a penalty. And the judge explicitly said, you can't do that. This judge in Tuscaloosa, it turned out pretty quickly, folks found that he is also a donor to Alabama. It's publicly listed.
Shocking.
So that got people's hackles up pretty quickly. And so I think the first reaction from a lot of people is to accuse Nate Oates of being a hypocrite, because when James Najee was made eligible at Baylor a few weeks back, right around the turn of the year, he had a quote, talking about, I think it's, this is his actual quote, I think it's taking away opportunities from kids coming out of high school. I was a high school coach for 11 years. I wanted my kids to get opportunities when they left my program. It's taking these opportunities away from those kids. And so people jumped on that. A lot of people left out the second part of that quote, which was, would I have liked to have just kept it that you're a true amateur and you play college basketball? Probably, but that ship sailed. That's not where we're at anymore. So it's sort of Oates a few weeks back being like, hey, I guess this is the world we live in. That was a foreshadowing of what was to come, because as he acknowledged during a press conference, I believe on Friday before the Tennessee game, the wheels started turning for him with Bediako when Najee got eligible, because he realized Bediako and Najee sat together at the draft. And so he said, wait a second, if this guy's eligible, how come the guy that they used to play at my school shouldn't be able to do this as well? So they started the process. There was some tweeting that I highlighted in my newsletter last week along the lines of, just because the NCAA, or just because this judge says Bediako can play, doesn't mean Nate Oates has to play him. It's like, well, this was 100% Nate Oates' idea. So I don't know. Like, he didn't just show up at campus and say, hey, coach, can you play me? And Nate Oates was like, oh, I don't know. What will the NCAA say? What makes this different than the Najee situation is that Bediako already forewent his NCAA eligibility when he declared for the draft after being a college basketball player. And that is why the NCAA, Alabama went to the NCAA, asked for a waiver, didn't get it, and then went to a judge who essentially forced the situation. So the situations are different. Now, I think a couple things can be true here. And again, I want to lay this all out. One is that the rules have gotten to a point in college basketball and the eligibility where it's such a confusing mess that most people just throw their hands up, including some coaches, right? A lot of people, if you talk to a random casual college basketball fan, they'd be like, I don't know, I guess all of these guys are eligible. Who cares, right? And so the chaos around the rules and how quickly things have changed in the past few years, and the sort of uncertainty and the NCAA's constant, appeals to Congress to try and get some guardrails or whatever the phrase of the moment is, has created a situation where this sort of thing can happen. And a lot of people will draw equivalencies to James Najee, to European players. That can be true at the same time as Alabama is doing something worse here. This is bad. I think it's just plainly bad what's happening. And I think trying to get this guy eligible to the NCAA, and the NCAA says no. And probably it was like, wait, what? No, of course this guy's not eligible. He entered the NBA draft as a previous Alabama player. He can't come back to college basketball. That's like right there in the rule. Instead of being like, well, I guess that didn't work, it was worth a shot, Alabama goes to a judge and forces the issue. That's bad in and of itself. What is also bad, I think, is what Nate Oates and Greg Byrne came out and said about it. Nate Oates in his press conference, Greg Byrne wrote a tweet, I believe on Friday as well, where they essentially put Bediako in the same bucket as every, former G League player, as Najee, and as every European player who has come over from Europe, and said, oh, well, all these guys they're all pros. They all have been paid one way or the other. Why is this any different? To me, this has it's a clear case of intentionally muddying the waters, right? Like a lot of the European guys are not like Charles Bediako. Number one, they've never played college basketball before. Number two, I don't know what everybody made in Europe that's playing college basketball right now. Maybe there's a case, but Greg Byrne said, the distinction, let's see, I want to make sure I want to get the quote right. There are many programs across the country with former G League and EuroLeague players on their rosters who have been deemed eligible. At the end of the day, these are men with professional experience that are now playing in college. Why should a student athlete who earned millions competing professionally overseas be eligible to return while someone earning $50,000 annually in the G League is not? Okay. So the vast majority of these European guys do not earn millions of dollars playing professional basketball. The reason they're in professional basketball primarily is because in Europe, that is how you develop as a player. From like the age of 11, 12, 13, you get with a club and the club develops you and you reach a point where you either make it to the top tier of the team in the league, or you kind of get into a middle ground where you're not quite good enough. And a lot of these guys it's the same way as in soccer. Some of these guys they play at a lower level, their careers end, they have to go find a real job, whatever the case may be. A lot of those guys at that level developmentally in Europe get paid like $1,000 a week, $2,000 a week, low level salaries that are not, what we're talking about here. And so both Oates and Byrne made this argument that Bediako is just like everybody else. It's the same deal. It's no different. And that to me is the thing that I think maybe beyond the judge being in Tuscaloosa and being an Alabama donor, maybe got people's ire up to the point where you saw Saturday night what felt like to me a real groundswell of people, at least online, actively rooting against Alabama against Tennessee. And I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite like it, even with the Najee stuff.
Yeah, it set a bad precedent. And like you said, I think it was January 5th when he went on, I think it was Sirius XM, like the college sports radio show on Sirius, where Nate Oates gave that interview. And I'm glad that you gave the full transcript of what he said, because I think the end of what he said was actually the most telling part, which I think a lot of people have left out, because a lot of people were saying, well, he's such a hypocrite. He was saying, 20 days ago or whatever it was that, he's a high school coach. He did it for 11 years. He don't want to take away opportunities. But I think the way that he spun that whole thing forward, which is like, if this is what it is, James Najee, then this is what it is. And like, if you want to muddy the waters, like, we will get into the swamp, you know what I mean? Which is basically what the implication to what Nate Oates was saying. And I do believe Nate Oates is being forthright in the sense that he is correct in saying that Bediako is not the bad guy, right? He's like, Bediako did nothing wrong, but the problem with the whole situation is like what he's doing and what this whole situation has created is, by all accounts, wrong, right? Bediako is not necessarily in the wrong, but the situation is wrong. And I kind of compare it to, remember when South Park did James Cameron, like the bar is so low, like we need James Cameron. It was like an Abyss reference where he goes down and he has to raise the bar of everything. Like the bar is so low in college basketball right now, and we have nobody that is willing to try to raise the bar with leadership, right? Everyone has just decided to, well, if the bar is that low, we might as well put more weights on it and just let it go all the way to the bottom, to the depths of the sea. And we are all lost at sea right now because nobody knows what the actual rules are. And I think you did a great job of trying to, kind of do the false equivalency that we have going on here, which is Najee, Bediako, any of these guys from overseas, Dame Sarr or, Luka Bogovac, right? Any of these guys, they're all on the same sort of tear where it's not really the case because this is a guy who played college basketball, now is returning to college basketball. They extended his TRO, which is the restraining order that got him the ability to play on Saturday. Now he's going to be able to get 10 more days of, basically the ability to play without any sort of interruption. He played 25 minutes on Saturday, right? I mean, he was basically, by all accounts, they're starting five. He ended up playing more minutes than Aiden Sherrill, who has been the guy the entire season. I think Sherrill played 22 minutes. Bediako ended up playing 25 minutes, had 13 points, 3 rebounds. He's obviously played for Nate Oates. So there's a little bit, not even a little bit, there's a lot of difference there between some guy coming over from Serbia and joining the team in January as opposed to a guy who's definitely been in Nate Oates' system. And, from here, the real question is, what did Nate Oates just create? Well, he created a domino effect that's going to lead to a lot of teams and a lot of programs basically finding ringers through this loophole. And the loophole is only going to get bigger, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is everybody's looking for an edge. Everybody's looking for a competitive advantage. And if someone's going to take this type of leap, and it is a leap of faith, and obviously there's a lot of implications, and like I said, to the whole situation, it's going to lead to more of this, where more programs that are like at their wits' end, and it's like, what do we do to improve our roster? Go take this swing. And then from there, we're really in muddied waters. We're really in the depths of the abyss, and we don't really know where we're going to go from here. And again, it's not Bediako's fault. I know Nate Oates is pretty, he's been pretty stern to the fact that this was the agent, that Bediako's agent came to him and kind of presented this opportunity because he thought there would be more money for Bediako. I understand that as well, because look, that's what agents are doing. They're trying to maximize their talent. That's just kind of the name of the game, and these agents are running everything anyways these days in college basketball. But the fact that we've started this domino effect, and the fact that it's going to be reciprocated elsewhere, is just such a slippery slope. And I don't necessarily blame Nate Oates for it. I mean, he kind of said it in that first interview. I mean, he said, if they're going to do this, then I will have to basically match it at some level to feel like I have equitable playing field. And then he has done something that we didn't even know really was going to be possible without some sort of insane judgment. And of course, precedent matters. As we both know, you're in DC, you know how much precedent basically dictates the terms of everything that happens in this country and beyond. So the fact that we've now set the precedent is very scary stuff. And I think everybody is disillusioned to the fact that college basketball is not what it once was. But this thing, I mean, I have Dennis Scott. I'm talking to Dennis Scott tomorrow, right? I mean, he had 1 year of eligibility left with Georgia Tech. I mean, if he was in shape and ready to go, could D3 go back, 3D go back and play, and be a part of Lethal Weapon 3 again? I don't know. I mean, could Tyler Hansbrough, I guess he played 4 years, but maybe they could say he could grant him a 5th year. I don't know. We've just created this whole situation now where nothing makes sense. And if guys in the G League can find their way back, I saw someone tweeted today, J.D. Davison just got assigned to the G League. Should Nate Oates go get him a guard because he has so many injuries with Holloway and all these guys? I mean, that's what we're dealing with right now. And it's just, I don't know if scary is the right word. It's just frustrating, right? I mean, you and I, we love college basketball. There's so many fans that love the game. And I think the sport has just gotten so out of hand because we have no leadership. And I think attitude reflects leadership. We have no leadership, so therefore everybody has a bad attitude. And I guess the one good part, like you said, is that people came together, I guess, to pull against this a little bit. I saw Tennessee after they won, they tweeted at the Delaware Bluecoats, right? Take that. So now we got G League, college basketball battles happening right now because of this sort of stuff. But it's just an insane time, an insane situation, and it's only going to go and get worse from here, probably. And I think that's really the most damning part.
Yeah. So a few things here. I do blame Nate Oates and I do blame Alabama for this. I think this is, like I said, this is different. The loophole is actually Najee. That is a loophole that when that was announced felt super weird and wrong to everyone because look, this guy got drafted 31st overall in 2023. How can he possibly be a college basketball player? But, you go sit down and take a deep breath and look at the NCAA rule, and he does fit with the rule. He was never a college basketball player. He went straight to the NBA draft and didn't, have a contract, was in the G League for a while, is technically eligible under where the NCAA rules sat. Or sit, or supposed to be sitting, to come back. And yes, Baylor found a loophole and everyone was weirded out and annoyed and mad about it. And I think understandably so. And it has turned out not to have a huge impact because it turns out Najee is apparently just not that good at basketball. We'll say this every week and every time he gets brought up, but like 31st overall pick in the draft a few years ago, I don't know, man.
I think we call that a bad evaluation.
That's not a great evaluation. But this is not a loophole. This is just going to a local friendly judge and having the judge sign an order that says the NCAA rules don't apply here. I have the power of the court to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. And I do blame Alabama for pursuing this because to me, and again, it's made worse by the whole, okay, here's how we sell it. Everybody's the same. All these guys are pros. And what's the difference between Charles coming back even after he willingly, knowingly left behind his college amateur eligibility or, quote unquote amateur eligibility to go play NBA basketball and stay in the NBA draft. That's a clear like red line. It just is what it is. Mm-hmm. And so I do blame Alabama for pursuing this because the attitude, as you alluded to, like with a lack of leadership in the sport more broadly, the attitude is something that I think we see in society. And not to get on a big soapbox here, sound like an old man, like with my, raising my fist up to the clouds or whatever. But I think we see societally from top on down, which is, well, if no one's going to stop me, why shouldn't I?
Right.
It's someone else's job to stop me from doing this. It's someone else's job to create the perfect airtight system that I can't exploit. Otherwise, why shouldn't I exploit it? It's like the Bilbo Baggins like moment in Lord of the Rings at the beginning where he like freaks out and is like, well, after all, why shouldn't I? And it's very clear in the text of the book and the movie, whatever, the history of Lord of the Rings lore. That's a bad impulse. You shouldn't want to do that. Like he overcomes that in the moment. You're like, Bilbo, what a good guy. Like he sorted himself out there with a little help from Gandalf. Like that is a bad thing. And I'm going to exploit this system until someone actually stops me attitude is wrong. And that is what's frustrating to me. And again, the second part of that is leadership at the sport level. And I wrote about this on my newsletter on Friday. Clearly, you're not going to get leadership from fans who are going to be tribal about this, who are, I've seen tons of stuff from Alabama fans saying, are you just mad? You didn't get this mad about Najee. You're just mad that we got a good player because you hate Alabama. Like I care, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get leadership from the NCAA. They're trying, but they have their hands tied, as this case makes abundantly clear, by a legal system that is able to be exploited, or at the very least doesn't care about NCAA rules and is going to do whatever it's going to do anyway, depending on the venue and the judge and so on and so forth. We've seen this time and again over the last 5-6 years. You're not going to get leadership from like athletic directors and conferences because everybody who works for those places, by and large, is mostly just concerned about how they can squeeze more money out of TV rights deals. They're not taking the leadership, coming together, trying to put rules in place. There's no power league coalition coming together to say, hey, look, we need to make some ground rules here. Like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do, just together voluntarily. And so it fundamentally does come down to coaches. And I think it's naive to ask this, and it's probably not going to happen. But sure, you're not going to get leadership maybe from the Nate Oateses of the world. And there are plenty of those types out there. They just want to win. They're going to do what it takes to win. They'll figure out the explanation later. They're just going to say what they need to say to get the guy on the team who can get them, 5-6 rebounds a game, 10, 12 points a game, shore up the interior defense. We're trying to win some ball games here. But there are lots and lots of coaches out there who I guarantee you saw the Bediako thing and were like, wait, what the fuck are we doing? Mm-hmm. How is this a thing? And it is way past time for there to be like a real movement. And coaches have an organization, it's the NABC. It doesn't do a whole lot, at least that I can remember in my time covering college basketball, which is a while now. There has got to be some point at which coaches start to police each other and police themselves in a way that doesn't encourage this constant attitude of, hey, if no one's going to stop me, why not? I'm just going to do it. I'll throw everything I'll create as much chaos as I need to, because I'm trying to win basketball games, and that's the only thing that matters that I do. And it's just that is the most frustrating and disappointing part of it to me, is because, like, again, if this was a hidden rule in the NCAA rulebook somewhere, you exploited it, whatever, fine. Like, not my idea of how you might want to go about building and developing a basketball team at the college level, but whatever. But the NCAA tells you, no, that's against our rules. What are you talking about? The guy gave up his eligibility, and you just go get a court order to do it anyway. And then come with the explanation about, whatever. And Greg Byrne, ended his tweet. That said, we must remain competitive and act in the best interest of our teams. After he does a whole spiel about, oh, the rules are confusing and we all want certainty and blah, blah, blah. And his kicker is, if this particular case can help shape the future of the sport and better regulation of college athletics as a whole, we welcome that. It's just like, no, you don't. You absolutely don't. You're doing the opposite of that.
Yeah. There's actually like a lot of times what people say is usually either the opposite of what they feel, I feel like, in these times. You know what I mean? So if you actually work from that angle, you can kind of figure out what they're actually saying. And I think that's a perfect example of that. So it's like they're basically saying, we're going to do what we want, try to stop us. Every time the NCAA goes to court, they lose. So they're not really going to be able to do anything. We know that, and we're going to move forward in our own best interest. As you said, like, everybody is moving in their own best interest, and that is not good for the collective of the sport, because when everybody's out for themselves, then what do we have at the end of the day? We have a bunch of mercenaries who are working in their own tribes. And again, like you said, the conferences, I mean, remember when the Pac-12, what was it, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the ACC, like, they were like, we're going to have our own, like,
the alliance.
The alliance, yeah. Like, I mean, look what that did. That killed a conference, which, kind of, that speaks to where we are with the whole situation. So every single time someone's like, well, we're trying to get to a better day, it's like, well, you're trying to get to a better day in theory, but in reality, in real time, you're trying to help yourself get an advantage and get an edge. And it kind of reminds me of like church league, like basketball, like back in the day. Like, there would be like teams that would have guys that you're like, this guy definitely doesn't go to your church, Like, he's not supposed to be on your team, but I guess he went to one service, and like somehow you've got like video and like signed evidence that he did. So now he's somehow the starting point guard on our high school team and also on your church league basketball team. And you guys are gonna win. It's like, it feels like that is the world that we're in, and it just feels so out of hand, and it feels so it just feels like gross, I guess is the best word for it. And and I hate it.
It feels like counter to sportsmanship in some fundamental way.
It's bad faith business. Yeah.
It feels like similar to that, like, a team that you play in AAU every weekend suddenly shows up to a tournament with some kid you've never seen before who's 6'7" and is going to play, college basketball. And you're like, all right, congrats, guys. Like, you win by 20 now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fun. The Danny Almonte. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Wait, we're having fun now. It's just like, what is more important? And the attitude of just like, again, it really bugs me, of just like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to sell it. And it's up to you guys to stop me. If you don't like it, it's not my job to do the right thing. It's someone else's job to make sure that I can't do the wrong thing. Drives me nuts. And I do think that kind of resonated with people, like we said, it felt like a groundswell of people rooting against Alabama on Saturday night, and, feeling uncomfortable when accounts were tweeting out like a highlight of Bediako's dunk early in the game without any context as to why he was there or what he was doing, just sort of treating it as a normal thing. And, relishing when Tennessee posted the G League tweet after the game. It really did seem to kind of cross over, and it might be as simple as people got enough wind of it that they understood that this is like a Tuscaloosa judge, and people can wrap their heads around the idea of like, hold on now, that sounds a little suspect, even if they don't understand the differences in eligibility or why it seems weird to people who are super focused on this that Bediako could possibly be eligible, and why he shouldn't be or Najee should be or whatever. And it sort of seemed to cut through, and it was kind of a weird, funny thing. And the discussion about it, to transition somewhat here, Because to be honest, I feel like this conversation should end, or this part of the podcast should end with like where do we go from here? It's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like,
I just don't think it's going to be the last time we see it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is going to be like, now that Nate Oates has done this. And I mean, honestly, like, Scott Drew found this loophole, but then like they've been able to extrapolate that loophole into like this bigger thing. It's like now it's like the gloves are off. Like, who's the next coach that's going to, you know what I mean, join the party, because they will.
There's lots of friendly local judges around the country. You know, if you don't have to do this in a big regional district court, whatever, you can just go to the local courthouse and get it done. Which is, again, like, it's naive to ask, but you really hope that at some level, this diffuse group of college basketball coaches out there could say to themselves, like, yes, we're in a weird purgatory right now with eligibility rules. No, we don't understand what's happening. Yes, this is strange, and we don't like competing against it when it feels like we have one hand tied behind our back, all that stuff. But you would just hope at some level there is a bit of a move to, at the very least, encourage people who get to do that job at the level that Nate Oates does it for a lot of money every year, who have a big bully pulpit and can influence the way people think and feel about the sport, to consider the greater good, do the right thing, not just because they're being forced to by a rule, and like pump the brakes on this stuff a little bit. Because the other alternative is everybody just does this forever, and the NCAA never has rules again until there's collective bargaining or whatever the case may be. And that doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon. So
No.
we like, people need to like kind of do the right thing beyond just when they have to. And if that's not a baseline expectation of college basketball coaches, if that's an unreasonable expectation, then we're in a bad spot.
Yeah, let's raise the bar. Like that's really what it comes down to. Like, the standard is not the standard. The standard is way below what it should be. And the worst part about it, Eamon, is that there's such great basketball that's happening. Like, the actual on the court performances are being, like, we're talking about James Najee, and we're talking about, Bediako and all this sort of stuff. And like, we're not talking about how great the actual gameplay is, in some of these games, especially with guys who just came out of high school, which might be the best freshman class we've ever seen in college basketball because of all these other sideshows, which is even more damning to the whole sport.
Yeah. And it was both funny and ironic that was the big talking point. And it remains a big talking point because it's going to, it's a hugely impactful situation, and we'll see how the eventual court order situation plays out. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's been extended for another 10 days, really just procedurally, because the NCAA lawyer couldn't get to Tuscaloosa to argue the case because of the sort of countrywide snowstorm we're having, or at least East Coast, Midwest, Southeast snowstorm that happened over the weekend, and so much travel is shut down. So it's kind of de facto extended, but maybe the NCAA lawyer gets in there and makes a pretty obvious and clear-cut case, and the Tuscaloosa judge says, you know what, you're right, I take it back and forget this whole thing happened. Doesn't seem super likely to me, but we'll see how it plays out and what the implications are. But yeah, I mean, I was about to say, this whole discussion and the tenor around the game kind of overshadowed. Like, Nate Amon had 29 points on 20 shots and 7 rebounds, and is starting to like justify further and further his preseason lottery pick kind of status. And a guy who has maybe fallen by the wayside a little bit, at least in the public imagination or college basketball fans' imagination, because he struggled a little bit early in the year. Tennessee's had its struggles, but he's starting to look like one of the best freshmen in the country. And I feel like we've got like 10 or 15 of these guys that we need to talk about on a regular basis, including a couple of guys who had, 40 plus points this past weekend. So, yeah, it's weird because the product on the court is amazing. And I think the product on the court has benefited in many ways from the chaos off of it, and the older players being willing to stay for more money, and the European guys coming into the game and having a bit more experience and looking a little bit more advanced in their development. All of this stuff has been really good for actually sitting down and watching the basketball, which is why it's been kind of easy to keep those two things separate. Like, oh yeah, off the court, it's a complete mess, but on the court, wow, the product is great. I'm really enjoying this college basketball season. You throw in a great freshman class, and that's been true. And the two things kind of combined on Saturday night. But But Ament was great. It was a great win for Tennessee. Obviously, a satisfying win for them emotionally, but also a win they kind of needed to have in some ways in terms of like, I don't think they're going to miss the tournament or anything, but it's been a little bit disappointing for them. And that was a bit of a marker that they put down on Saturday night.
And it also got Rick Barnes a lot of easy PR win. You know what I mean? It was just Rick Barnes is all of a sudden like the greatest guy in college basketball, and everybody's rooting for his team. And like Gillespie's been great for this team pretty much throughout the season. He's been the one steady one for this group. But it was nice to see Amin have such a good game, like you said. And that was probably his best performance. But it did feel to me like Nate Oates was trying to get Bediako for I think the next 4 games is like Missouri, but then the next, it's like 4 teams that are ahead of them in the SEC that they're going up against. And in his mind, he's like, that's kind of the gaming of the system that's going on. He's like, well, I'll get Bediako. He'll help us in these 4 games against these top opponents, and that'll kind of right the ship for us. But then it goes into does the committee, if this does get ruled and overturned, does the committee look at those games differently if the results are in Alabama's favor? I don't know how that works at the end of the day. So it's just, again, the waters are so muddy that you don't really know what to do. But can we talk about the freshman? I think that's the positive spin here, because Amit was incredible, 29.7 rebounds, 3 assists, and he was not alone. I mean, across the board, we just kept seeing guys just completely ball out on Saturday.
Yeah, it was great. So let's go to Texas Tech Houston, where Kingston Flemings, I mean, holy cow. Like we talked about last week, we talked about Texas Tech last week, we talked about Houston last week, and I kind of floated my theory that actually, you know what? They're starting to look a little scary again. The defense is starting to look, and the rebounding starting to look more and more Houston-ish, and maybe sprinkling the freshman stardust on top of that in a way that Kelvin Sampson basically never has is the argument for why this might be the year that they can get over the top. Because sometimes you need those guys. You just need pros, and they have a couple pros on the team now in a way that he hasn't had really at any super high level, with the possible exception of Jarris Walker. And I still kind of think that even after Houston lost this game, because look, Texas Tech was incredible, particularly in the first half on the offensive end. And the systemic Houston excellence defensively couldn't quite manage. Christian Anderson is awesome. JT Toppin is awesome. And they can kind of do stuff. If you get them 2-on-2 in any space of the floor, they're going to be hard even for the best, most dialed in systemic defense in the country, or one of them, to stop. And so you can kind of shake hands, tip your cap, and move on from that, and give credit to Texas Tech for an incredible offensive performance, a team that I love, that we've talked about a lot. I don't want to overreact to a home win over a really good team, but don't think I need to. I was on Texas Tech already and really like that team. But I come away from this game with Houston just thinking hey man, the defense didn't hold up. It's typical end of the bargain. Rebounding so-so. Uzan had 5 points, struggled all day. Emmanuel Sharp was fine, but not amazing. 6 of
stat line looks better than the
field.
actual game. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't play great. Tugler struggled again, at least offensively. Sinak had 2 points on 1 field goal attempt, and still nearly won at Texas Tech because you have a guy who's going to be a lottery pick who put up 42 points on, 4 of 9 from 3, 11 of 17 from 2, mid-range, just lights out. I think it's, despite the loss, bullish for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for Houston, and I think, if you talk to diehard Houston fans, they would say the one knock, I mean, obviously you can't really knock what Kelvin Sampson has been able to do. 11-game winning streak going into this game. This was kind of a get-back game for Texas Tech, all that sort of stuff you take into account here. But the one knock always has kind of been on the offensive end, the lack of imagination, right? There always kind of feels like Houston is struggling to kind of get points in ISO situations, and a basket is it's a grading experience, you know what I mean? It can be a little bit unpleasant at times. But when you have someone like Kingston Flemings, it's wow. Well, you drop him into the mix, and this is this is pleasant. I'm having a great time. And he was incredible in this game. Like you said, 42 points, 38 minutes. He did his best to try to get other guys involved, but there felt like a point where he just put on the Superman cape and said, I guess I'll do my best here to keep us in this game. JT Toppin was also incredible in this game. I think the story was the rebounding margin. I think Texas Tech ended up with like 20 offensive rebounds in this game. So that was obviously a big reason for why they were able to win this game. McCaslin, after the game, was talking about Josiah Mosley, who has been basically, he had 2 practices, I think, before this game, but had a great 10-minute spell for this team, ended up getting them 6 points in that 10-minute span. So, like, it was kind of the unsung heroes. Anderson didn't have that great of a game. Atwell was okay, but again, it was, JT Toppin's kind of game, his kind of night. He made big shot after big shot when they needed him to. Just sort of the reliability of him was great. But again, going back to Houston, when you look and forecast their future in the NCAA tournament, I mean, they have a Kemba Walker type player on their team in Kingston Flemings, where it's like, well, he can win you a game even when we play poorly around him. And that is a special sauce offensively that I don't feel like we've ever, we've had great guards. We've seen, high level play from Houston guards in the past. But that was the most points scored by a Houston player under Kelvin Sampson. And this is a freshman. You know what I mean? It's like when you have A.J. Debanza breaking Danny Ainge's freshman scoring record for BYU, and you have Kingston Fleming setting Kelvin Sampson's scoring record at Houston, it's like it's all happening in real time on Saturday, and you're just saying to yourself, man, this is special. Like, even for me, as I was kind of catching up on all the games that were happening, I just kept seeing stat lines, and we'll talk about Wagler for sure as well. It's like, as you kept seeing like these stat lines coming underneath, you're like, is that over the past 2 games? Like, is this some sort of combined stat that's happening? It's like, no, these are real performances that are happening. And Flemings just kind of changes the whole dynamic of this Houston team offensively. And, I just really think that as far as where they can be, moving forward, you don't need him to have a 40-point game all the time, but the fact that he has the ability to do that is a nice feather in your cap. You know what I mean? And I think Sampson probably will say we don't want him to have those types of games. We want other guys to get involved, but it's nice to know that you have it if you need it.
Yeah. They got to get Uzan going.
Yeah, right.
It's odd. It's starting to get, he played better of late. But, again, 6 points, 0 for 2 from 2, 2 of 4 from 3, not super involved. And a lot of those kinds of possessions that you do see with Houston sometimes, where the offense kind of breaks down and then it's on someone to get a shot up. And if it doesn't go in, get an offensive rebound and try to get a kick out 3 or something that's an even better look off the offensive rebound, even if it's just a putback. And Uzan had a fair number of those possessions that just kind of died on the vine, but he also just wasn't super involved. He played 38 minutes, but his usage rate was 11%. Just not a whole lot going on from him. And you look at, his last couple seasons, he shot almost 43% from 3 last year on 145 attempts. That's a good number. He's at 315, 31.5% from 3 this year. And you feel like that number will come back up a little bit, but he's had some of that variance previously in his career without a ton of volume. So without him, that's, I think, to me, the one big difference between, when you look at them statistically, between this year's Houston team and last year's Houston team, is last year's Houston team, besides being a bit better on the defensive glass, which they definitely were last year, and I think it helped with some of the the experience and the big bodies with J1 and playing alongside Tugler. Never been a great defensive rebounding team with Houston. They're just kind of a offensive rebounding machine that gets a lot of credit for rebounding, but their defense, because they play so aggressively and they trap stuff and whatever, they can get out of position and give up some offensive boards in the exchange. But they were the 3rd best 3-point shooting team in the country last year, and they're not this year. And for as good as Flemings has been, I'm kind of talking myself into this because I'm listing a flaw, similar to saying you needed a freshman to score 40. You can twist it either way. Like, you needed a freshman to score 42 points to stay in the game, and you still didn't win, or your freshman is capable of doing that and can give you some of that in the tournament when you need it. It's similar with the 3-point shooting. Is like, you can make a case that number will improve, that they're not the 150th best 3-point shooting team in the country, but we're pretty deep in the season now. And that's kind of where they are, even if the numbers, ticked up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with them. But I again, it was a loss that still sort of confirmed my pre-existing biases that this Houston team can do a lot of their usual baseline stuff that they've always done really well. Defense, rebounding, blah, 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 with, again, a lottery pick shot creation guy with the ball in his hands, making things happen on the offensive end that can help you bail yourself out of some of those possessions that stall out and that don't flow, where, it feels like Uzan's dribbling the air out of the ball at the top of the key and there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but it was a fantastic game and a fantastic performance from Flemings. And it was somehow, unbelievably, not long after that game was over, eclipsed by another freshman playing at Illinois, in Keaton Wagler, which, I had two different people during the game ask me how he didn't get more offers coming out of high school. And this is one of those where it's just like, I guess he played for kind of a small high school and his AAU program wasn't like on the major circuits with, one of the two big companies, Nike or Adidas. A little bit like Fleming's in that way. I guess his AAU team was, only with like Puma or something like that. Not the kind of thing that I'm particularly dialed into before these guys actually get on campus. But, you do occasionally see this sometimes where guys who have a lot of potential and people around them sort of see it, but it takes them getting onto the college stage or at least getting close to it, like Wagler did at Illinois when he got on campus this summer, for even Illinois, who recruited him, to be like, oh God, like this guy's awesome. We are going to put the ball in this kid's hands way faster than any of us thought we were going to. And, they've phased him in and let him play off the ball to start the season to sort of get his feet under him. And now they're fully in, like, we found lightning in a bottle. Take the ball up the floor every time, fella, and do whatever you're going to do, play off ball screens and just go to work. And he was unbelievable in Mackey Arena, not at home, didn't get the flow going at home, in Mackey Arena against one of the better teams, one of the 10, 15 best teams in the country in Purdue. Just a remarkable performance. And it's one of those guys where you feel like you're seeing the NBA future happen in college basketball. Like, my classic example of this is Joel Embiid, where like he got to campus as a freshman at Kansas and was like Bambi on skates in a lot of games, but he was doing stuff that was interesting. And by like the middle of the Big 12 season, he was like dream shaking people. And
you started to see the touch, you know what I mean? Like you started seeing like the feathery touch, and you're like, oh, this guy is
this guy is like, he's like
downloading
basketball, like,
right.
At a rapid clip and just getting extremely good at it almost immediately. And it feels like Wagler is going through a bit of that now too, where it's like, this guy's a pro, and he's a pro with size and feel and touch that, is a combination that NBA scouts, like, that doesn't come along very often. It's like an Anthony Davis thing. Like, oh, he was a guard when he was a kid and then he grew 8 inches and now he's one of the best players the college basketball seen in the last 2 decades. Not putting Wagler in that company just yet, but he has a similar story of like, was a guard as a kid. No one really paid attention to his prep career, grew a bunch, and sort of has now progressed into like a kind of a really unique player.
Yeah, 6'6". I mean, the size is dynamic. It's also fascinating because it's like Boswell hurts his hand, right? He's going to be out till mid-February. That leaves this kind of gaping hole where if you talk to Illinois people, they're like, we're kind of worried about the point guard position, who's going to initiate the offense. And then you see Wagler and Merkovich kind of just like share the duties. And Wagler obviously primarily was the guy in this game, and he's just bringing the ball up the floor. He's like trying to run the offense, but if the offense doesn't work, it's like, well, step back 3 in your face, kick out. I mean, there were 2 huge shots. They had a 9-0 run there at the end of this game where they have 3 different threes that were just created off kind of all eyes on Wagler because he had just been so incredible in this game. He also closed out the game at the free throw line, which is very encouraging. Again, like for freshmen, that's one maybe knock. And it was fascinating to kind of see him go head to head against Braden Smith, who is just such an assassin himself, right? I mean, to see, Braden Smith was incredible in this game too. He's like answering every single time as, Illinois and Wagler are going insane. he's like, wow, now I need to do this. Now I need to do that. There's like, a double screen at the top that he's like getting downhill and getting that, Chris Paul elbow jumper every single time. It feels like he can get it automatically and he's answering the bell. But so did Wagler every single time. And I think that was, to me, the most, they put up like a stat in the game. It was like youth versus experience. It was like, it looks like experience versus experience right now because Wagler is playing at such a high clip and at such a high level. It doesn't feel like he's rushed or he's like playing out of himself. It just feels like he's kind of playing cool, calm, and collected. And I had some Kansas people reach out to me. They're like, how do we miss this guy? I mean, this guy's in Kansas. How is he not playing for Bill Self right now? How is he at Illinois? But it goes back to what you said about kind of a little bit of a hidden gem. It's hard to be a hidden gem these days with how much we know and how much we see with all these kids starting when they're like 12, 13 years old with the internet and Instagram highlights and all this sort of stuff. But it was an incredible game. Again, the shot making down the stretch was awesome. And when he was going off in the first half, even I kind of was thinking to myself, well, he'll cool off a little bit, right? I think he had 24 in the first half. He had 24. The rest of his teammates had 15, and you're like, well, he'll come back to earth in the second half. And it was like, no, he's just going to continue to dominate this game. And Mackey is a special place. We call it Mackey Magic, right? I mean, they have something going over the past few years with the paint crew and everything. But kind of to see what Iowa State did and to see what Wagler just did at Mackey, it feels like those performances are anomalies to say the least. And for those that both happen in the same season is a little bit shocking to me. Purdue fought back in this game, but again, the story was Wagler. He was incredible.
Yeah. So Kevin Sweeney, who writes at Sports Illustrated and does video work for Basket Under Review, was at the game. And it's funny. I remember seeing this sort of in my feed as I was catching up on the game at halftime. He said, that people were kind of questioning Purdue's lineup compositions. They were questioning how they were managing ball screens on Wagler. And Kevin tweeted like, look, I mean, if Keaton Wagler beats me scoring 40 on step backs while I pound you in the paint, I think I can live with that. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, actually, he's going to like going back to that at the end of the game. It's like, actually, he had 46 and you lost the game and you can't really like, I mean, Kevin and I bring that up because Kevin and Eric Fawcett did on Sunday, they did a version of the Scout Team where they do really in-depth breakdowns and Eric
really enjoying it. They've done some great stuff.
It's great stuff. And if you want to kind of know the hows and whys of the little strategy and tactics within the game that create the conditions for this, it's a really good watch. And I think there's a lot in there that, if you're Matt Painter and his assistant coaching staff, you go back and reconsider. One of those things was, they, at the end of the game, they started hedging and trying to take the ball out of his hands a bit more. And Kevin made the point following up on Twitter that like, maybe instead of doing that, you keep switching because you've got this freshman who's probably got to be exhausted at this stage in the game. And maybe that's when you do want him to feel himself a little bit and take some more of those 23 foot step backs. But he was so good that it's kind of just like, I'm sure there are defensive compositions that you could put together that would have minimized that. And maybe Purdue helped lay the groundwork a little bit for the performance with the way they manage ball screens and kind of the way they defend in general. And some of the, some of the things you give up with defensively when you have a guy like Braden Smith as your point guard. He gets you steals and he can create chaos plays, but he's going to be overmatched size-wise sometimes, and he's going to get lost on screens sometimes. The same goes with Lawyer, certainly. But I kind of came away from it being like, look, man, you
got to tip your cap. Yeah, I mean, that was I was like, what else can we do here?
I think the halftime read is correct in many ways of just like, if this is how you're going to lose the game, then walk off the court and try to forget it ever happened without, doing too much soul searching about it. But coaches being coaches and Matt Painter being Matt Painter, I'm sure there will be some soul searching about it. Meanwhile, Illinois, riding high, as you mentioned, without a super important player in Boswell, number one offense in adjusted efficiency in the country. Not really a thing they do poorly on the offensive end at this stage of the season. And, this is in Illinois. It's funny for all of the offseason talk about all these international players they were bringing in, and Stojakovic
was the big one, right? I mean, he if anything, he was on defense the whole time, just getting crushed by Braden Smith in this game.
Getting crushed. Yeah, he had a rough day at the office defensively, and I think, that it hasn't been the strength of this Illinois team, even though they've been fine. Clearly, like I think usually under Underwood, their best work is done at the offensive end, typically in the Underwood era, but they're solid enough defensively. They get by there, and Wagler was like an interesting. They also have this guy as a true freshman coming in, barely merited a mention in the preseason. Like his offers were from Colorado State, Drake, I think one other, reputable but smaller mid-major. Minnesota offered him, and then Illinois. And Illinois, CJ Moore in The Athletic wrote a story. They offered him without seeing him for whatever reason. They just got a good vibe off of him, and then when they did go see him, the Underwood's son, the assistant coach, whose first name escapes me at the moment, told CJ, like, I watched him play 3-on-3. He's 6'6". He can handle it. He's got great feel and passing. Like, what am I missing here? We got to get this guy on campus as soon as possible before someone else sees him. So, it's remarkable to. I think this team would have been a really, really good offensive team, kind of like we expected coming into the year, if Wagler was, the 150th ranked freshman that people thought he was. And
I think he was number 261 in his class, by the way. So on the
composite.
Yeah, to put that in context. Also, the most he scored in high school was 32 points, he said after the game. So he's like, I've literally never scored that many points in my life. So, I mean, the most points you ever scored in your life at Mackey in Big Ten play in a game for like supremacy in the Big Ten. Pretty good.
Pretty good and exciting to watch. Super fun to watch. One of my favorite things, as we said at the top of the section here with him, is like watching a guy figure out how good he is in real time. I feel like we've seen it with Christian Anderson a lot this season.
Right.
And we're seeing it with Wagler now. And it is as exciting as things in college basketball get if you like watching players develop, which we do, even if they've been in the NBA for a couple of years. Not really. Okay, what else happened on Saturday? Oh, North Carolina got a big win.
Yeah.
We should talk about that since we did a bit of a Hubert vibe check, and the vibes were not great on last week's show. How are the vibes now?
I mean, everything is fluid, right? Isn't that what they say? All these situations are fluid. Everything changes in real time. I would say at halftime of that game, there was probably people, to use a Bill Simmons little trope here, they were willing to drive Hubert to the airport, even in an ice storm, to get him out of Dodge at that point. But, you talk about battling back in the second half in this game. If you watch the first half, I mean, in Virginia dominated the boards. Virginia's pressing the entire game. Virginia just looked like the team that was by far the better team. And, for the most part, they did in the second half at times as well. But for North Carolina to really find their footing in this game, it's Dixon. They've just kind of needed a point guard. And Kyan Evans, I think, is a lot better as a catch and shoot, off the ball kind of guard for this team. And he's becoming more of a reserve role. But for Dixon,
he's just 8 minutes in this game for Evans,
right,
which is kind of crazy.
I think he had 10 minutes in the game before. So, I mean, for him to go to the guard they went and got, right, to replace Elliot Cadeau, who looks like one of the best point guards in the country for Michigan, obviously that has not been an upgrade, to say the least. So, I mean, it is fascinating for them to have to rely on a freshman to get them into, a situation. But Caleb Wilson, again, you're talking about great freshmen and how, we've had such great freshman performances. He ties Tyler Hansbrough's record for 20-point games as a North Carolina freshman with 19. So, I mean, he is also playing some incredible basketball. Had a big moment at the end of this game where it kind of clears out and he gets downhill with a nice little step-through move to have a big layup to kind of close this game out. Jaren Stevenson was the real superstar in the second half coming off the bench. I've been a big proponent of, I don't understand why they don't start Stevenson, because that creates an advantage for them size-wise, and Stevenson has been able to switch on the guards pretty easily. He guarded R.J. Davis better than anybody last year at Alabama. I'm still confused with that sort of stuff, and I think that goes back to some of the coaching questions that kind of come out of this. But when they play, Dixon at the point guard, when they play Jaren Stevenson the minutes that he played, he ended up with 17 points in this game, a crucial 17 points, hit some big shots late in this one. they're a much better team than they look like in the first half. But again, it's just trying to figure out how to, I guess, scout better to start these games, and two, just get off to a better start, because they just get behind the 8 ball, and then they lean on the 8 ball himself, Caleb Wilson, to save them, and he can't save them every single time. And as we've seen, it did not work on the West Coast trip. It did work in Charlottesville, and Virginia will be fine. Honestly, the 2 games that Virginia lost in ACC play, the triple overtime game against Virginia Tech, which was an incredible game that could have easily gone their way, and then this North Carolina game where, for the most part, they dominated this game and looked like the better team. You don't really feel too bad for Virginia. I think they're in a good spot. But for North Carolina, this was kind of a must-win, needed win for Hubert Davis for sure. So better vibes for Chapel Hill, and it's right into a bye week, basically. So they don't play again until Saturday. So I think that was also a big part of this. They needed a little bit of a break to reset.
So vibes marginally improved, maybe not totally solved. Situation remains fluid.
Mm-hmm. Always fluid.
Carolina.
There you go.
I think that's fair enough. I think less fluid probably are the vibes in Providence, Rhode Island, with the Providence Friars and their fans. Big game between 2 teams with losing records in the Big East on a purely emotional basis, right? Like for Georgetown, winning at Providence, not going to get you in the NCAA tournament. For Providence, beating Georgetown, not going to do much for your resume either. But both sets of fans, particularly Providence fans, really, really, really wanted to beat the other team. And it looked like they were going to, and then they didn't. They had, I believe it was a 15-point lead in the second half that Georgetown erased to win the game at Providence against the man that replaced the Georgetown head coach at Providence, the Georgetown coach being Ed Cooley, the Providence coach being Kim English. If Providence fans were already not very happy with Kim English, and from everything I gather on the internet, they are not, Saturday was not a very good day.
No. Not at all. I was asking you before we got on the show, which coach they hated the most in the AMP. Was it Kim English or was it Ed Cooley? And you would think, if you did that test, there would be no chance that Cooley was not the right answer. But it felt like with the amount of boos that we've heard in that building, they've obviously lost some, gut-wrenching games. The UConn game comes to mind, obviously, and they've been in some games, again, the best scoring offense in the Big East, so there are some positives to point to with Providence. I like Vox a lot. They have some good players, especially freshmen on this team that have been impressive. But yeah, they seem fed up with the situation, and that is a very diehard fan base, as you and I know, covering the sport. You will hear from the Friars. They are not afraid to let you know how they feel, and it is not good feelings. It is not good energy. And I like Kim English. I would consider him a good guy. But good guys don't always win, as we know. And it does feel like it's trending in the wrong direction right now.
Yeah, I remember before the season when I was getting ready to write my Big East preview, I actually went into the Discord to ask, into the Providence channel to ask people there so that I didn't get the lay of the land wrong, like kind of where are you guys at? What's the consensus on Kim coming into this year? So that I wasn't like overhyping one random comment I saw on Twitter in like March of last year or something, right? Mm-hmm. Like not over indexing a couple of things that I saw just in the random flow of covering the sport. And, the consensus seemed to be coming into the year that people liked Kim on a personal level. They wanted him to do well. They felt the program had recruited well in the summer and put together a team that had essentially, and English obviously has a huge role putting together the team, but that there were basically no excuses, right? That's what I came back to, is like, he's got to win. We got to be in the tournament. We should be better than we were the last couple of years. The pieces are there to do it. And now's the time. Let's get it done. And that looks like a miles and miles away from where Providence currently is. And, I find that, we've talked about Georgetown a lot in the past few weeks and about, the cracks showing with Ed Cooley this season, being his third, and he arrived with all this fanfare and it hasn't gone well, and fans starting to turn on that situation, but there maybe not being as much of an impetus to get rid of him, in part because of how much money he's being paid and the sort of commitment from the administration there to you can imagine them doubling down and being like, no, this is who we hired. We're going to get this right. And so the pressure maybe just coming from like not feeling like you've done a job. It seems like the pressure at Providence will come from the fans, but may also come from the higher ups in the administration too.
Right.
It's a very different situation. And Kim, was a really well-regarded assistant under Rick Barnes at Tennessee, did a pretty good job at George Mason, but not a job that typically gets you like a high major position after 2 years. It was a lot of sort of reputation. Like Kim English has a really good reputation in college basketball. Like I've covered him since he was a player, and he was always one of those guys you could imagine being a coach, just super engaging and thoughtful. But when he was at George Mason, they were fine, and George Mason has been better since. And he's been at Providence now. This is his third season, and it hasn't really worked out. And I think fans there are justifiably upset with not just the disappointment of results, but what I think when you watch Providence, it's hard to see a clear, like, here's our stylistic identity. This is what we do. This is what we do well. We'll sacrifice X for Y. It's just a bit of a muddle, and it's been a muddle for a while with different sets of players, and it doesn't appear to be improving, even though they're not terrible. They've never been terrible. They're not terrible this year. They've got a lot of close losses. There are a few games that go in a different direction, and the conversation may be a little different, both in the conference and in the non-conference, but they haven't. And Saturday was like a death knell type of game, given the emotions and the way Providence fans feel about Ed Cooley and Georgetown. And it's one of those things where if you are monitoring coaching hot seat situations, it's very close to the top of the list right now. It's up there with Wes at Cincinnati, of just like, there's going to be changes made probably in the offseason.
Yeah, it's kind of like your seat warmer in your car, and it has the 3 different dials on it. It's like it goes from 1 to 2.
Number 3. Like,
yeah,
these days I'm on all those 3 dots all the time.
I think they're getting they're definitely at 2 probably. They might be getting up to 3 very soon. And you maybe after that game against Georgetown, it went up to 3 for Kim English. And again, just to lose to Cooley too, like it adds like an extra layer of insult to injury. And I think that's the other part where the emotional aspect of it kind of gets into play. And the St. John's game was nice. That was a nice win. Maybe they can go to UConn tonight on Tuesday and shock the world and get a win, and, things get back in the right direction, and there's like some emotional pull in the right direction, but it is, not trending in the right direction.
It's really not. And, it always depends with these situations too. I want to caveat it. Like, I'm not exactly sure what Kim English's buyout is. We can maybe find that out, but it's a little bit tricky sometimes with certain schools, and maybe that information is out there. I just don't have it to hand. But if it's like a big number, then maybe it's not, that dials it down a little bit.
I can't imagine it's a big number.
I can't imagine that either. And I also feel like at the end of the day, a lot of these schools, even when sometimes it feels like a big number. Now, we're not talking about like LSU or Texas A&M in football or something like that. But, people tend to, if the ground,
I'm seeing 8 million, so that's easy to.
It's not nothing, but it's not super prohibitive. So that could play a role as well in how things play out. We'll see how it goes. What else from this past weekend? USC won at Wisconsin. That was a nice win for a hit or miss USC team that I continue to be sort of confused by. Malik Renew continues to be like an awesome basketball player. That's just an incredible thing to witness. Spacing is so helpful, and offensive flow so helpful. Who knew? Jerome Tang, not a great performance against Kansas. I think, speaking of hot seat situations, that's thematically relevant there as well. And Auburn had a really great win over Florida,
right?
A Florida team that
looked like they had figured something out.
Yeah, that we've been sort of like, oh, here comes Florida. Things are starting to make sense. And Auburn kind of had their number, and Keyshawn Hall was great. And, Florida went back to shooting the ball poorly and turning it over. No, they didn't turn it over that much. They had 11 turnovers, which is not like crazy for them, but they were 7 of 27 from 3. Fland 0 for 4. Javian Lee 2 for 3. That's okay, but he had 7 points. So, The Xavier Lee rocket has yet to take off, and Florida kind of falling back in a little bit to what we saw in them in the non-conference. But credit to Auburn and Stephen Pearl. That's a big win on the road in an important game. Or were they on the road? Yeah, they were.
Yeah, Auburn was at Florida. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, huge win for Auburn and for sort of their resume, such as it is. And we're getting into resume season here. I'm not going to do any Bubble Watch updates on this podcast. I debated it because, frankly, I was going to write Bubble Watch, the first one of the. Don't tell people on my newsletter because they're going to be mad at me that I didn't do it. But then everybody got snowed in, and I'm stuck at home with my kids, so it didn't happen. It's
a little bit harder of a proposition with that setup. Yeah,
it's like the first one is always a real crash course in terms of seeing where everybody's resumes are. For example, the other day I saw people kind of arguing like Miami of Ohio doesn't have an NCAA tournament resume, and because they're like 90th in KenPom or whatever. I went and looked it up. They're like 50th in net. Like we're in business with that. Don't lose a game, and we're cooking. So there's lots of interesting stuff to get to there. That will come on later podcasts. I'll turn Tate into a bubble boy sooner rather than later.
I'm excited I like to hear like a nuanced bubble take. You know what I mean? I can't deal with the Lenardi graphic with like little snide remarks on it. Those are the bubble topics I can't really get down with, but it's okay.
Yeah. My Bubble Watch is probably overly wordy, but it ends up being a lot more like narrative and what's going on in the sport than like this team's in and this team's out. Right. Which is how I prefer it anyway. It's a skeleton to write about college basketball as much as it is a check-in on where the resumes are actually at. But, great games going on this weekend as well, or pardon me, this week. Obviously, as I mentioned, we had BYU, Arizona still in progress as we discussed it. It's about 20 seconds left in the first half here. Arizona's up 44-31 at BYU. Just a couple minutes ago while we were talking, saw an inbound turnover by BYU that I think Kevin Young is probably still angry about. And that was like 12 Arizona points ago. So we'll see how this game plays out. But we've got Purdue at Indiana Tuesday night. That is a huge game. It's a big game for Purdue coming off the Illinois loss. If I was Indiana and Indiana players and coaching staff coming into this game, I would not have been happy with what I saw on Saturday. I would have much preferred Purdue to cruise by about 15 because they're going to come into Bloomington looking to absolutely smack Indiana.
Yeah, with their hair on fire.
Of that happening are higher, even higher than they were already.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that. That's anytime you have a rivalry game like that, you're always, you're always smart enough to watch the game before to get a little temp check, maybe do a little scouting report. And then when you see them lose a game that they would probably in turn think they should win at home, you get the hairs on your neck go up a little bit and you're like, oh man, here they come. We're going to get the best version of Purdue in that game. It's also, to me, I feel like this week upcoming is kind of like Nebraska week. This is, can we see if Nebraska can keep this thing going? 24 straight wins dating back to the crown last year, which is, I think the record's 29 straight wins for the Big Ten. So can Hoiberg survive? I think they have Michigan tonight at Michigan. So, like, that's going to be a real big test for Nebraska. Like, can they keep the undefeated streak alive? And, we got three teams right now. We got Arizona, barring anything crazy, I think they should handle business. I'll knock on wood as I say that. It could have already happened and BYU came back, so I look dumb. But right now we have three teams as we're taping. So then we got Nebraska and we got Miami. So, like, this is a big week for the undefeateds, right? I mean, this kind of feels like when we have undefeateds in college basketball, they don't make it past – outside of Gonzaga 2021, right? They don't make it past late January, early February if they even get to this point. I know Arizona's best start was like 21-0 back in 2014. So they're kind of right there on their little cusp of, the longest they've been able to go undefeated to start a season. So Nebraska, Arizona, Miami, they're all on watch this week to see if they can keep it alive.
Yeah. Really interesting clip, actually, that I believe the Nebraska account put up after the win at Minnesota of Sam Hoiberg Fred Hoiberg in the locker room at halftime. They were trailing at the half and not playing particularly well. And, the speech he gave was not anything incredibly, super inspirational or motivating, but he did explicitly refer to the fact that, like, Hey, we kind of always do this. We're not great in first halves, and then we come out and like blitz people. We've been doing it all year. Let's go do that now. And I was listening to it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is kind of insightful. Mostly, I was focused on how tiny the Williams Arena away locker room is. It straight up looks like a grade school, like Catholic school gym that I grew up playing in. Like it's like the size of a bathroom. Really incredible. I mean, that's a disadvantage for road opponents. So why not keep it? It's an old building. The barn is a special place. You wouldn't be eager to renovate your away bathroom or your away locker room, chief among your renovations there. But I was just sitting there being like, this is Big Ten basketball. This is the smallest locker room I have ever seen a college game or like a high level undefeated Big Ten, conference title contender sitting in before. It's crazy.
Yeah, I kind of circled that game. I thought Minnesota might be the type of team to knock them off for their first loss, just because Minnesota's been so good at home. And when they were up, I was like, oh, this is kind of checking out. But it was a resilient response. And then, like I said, this week you got at Michigan, and then Sunday you get Illinois coming home to the barn. So, I mean, it's going to be a big week for Nebraska. Going to be fun. I'm going to watch both those games. Yep.
Very big week for Nebraska. We'll see how Indiana goes. It could be, you never know what you're going to get with Indiana. They're a little bit like Louisville that we saw tonight, in that get hot one night, can kind of play with a lot of teams, but the baseline stuff of size, rebounding, defense doesn't go their way. They kind of just have to shoot their way into games, and if the shots don't fall, much like we saw with Louisville in the second half against Duke, against quality competition, you can get run out of the gym real quick. We've got Kentucky at Vanderbilt this week as well, which is interesting. Vanderbilt having a little bit of a swoon lately, got back on the right side of things at kind of a disappointing Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State I would have had like in the top 50, top 40 to start the season. If I go back and look at it, and they're treading water as, 95th in Ken Palm right now, 88-56 loss in their own building to Vandy. So we'll see what Vandy has for Kentucky on Tuesday night. And then
Kentucky, by the way, turned things around, all of a sudden.
Well, we'll see. I mean, am I going that far with it? I guess they've won 5 in a row. And including the game over
like
Texas
under the radar, right? Like they won that miracle game with Mark Pope doing the Frank Beamer hands in the air celebration, right? And then ever since then they've just been rolling. So Kentucky, good for them.
I think the win over Texas last week, when they had 23 fouls and inspired, that was the game that inspired one of the better press conferences this year of Sean Miller, of just like, we have a disease called fouling. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not the refs. It's not Kentucky. It's just us. We will foul the shit out of you. You name it, any type of foul. It was fantastic.
He had that one this year, and he also had we talked about it, where he was talking about like crossing the street and a bus hitting you. He's like, I can tell them not to cross the street. You know what I mean? He's had a couple this year with Sean.
He's back in his element a bit now. That he's usually good for one of those a year, and he's right back in there. Didn't have many at Xavier. Maybe I just missed them, but yeah,
felt like he had Hurley and Patino to compete with, with that stuff. So you kind of probably a little bit more reserved. But you're in the SEC now. You're at a P4 again. Might as well just shoot from the hip. So
let him hang a little bit. Yep. Okay, and again, Friday, want to make mention of this. Michigan's playing Michigan State. Michigan State now 4th in Ken Palm. That I also would not have seen coming before the season started. Like, really incredible. This might be the best Michigan State team Izzo's had in like 7 years. So
Fears had 17-17 this weekend, by the way. Like we didn't even get to that. I mean, he's been incredible.
He talk about going up a level. Like he was not a good offensive player last year. They won in spite of him on the offensive end last season, and now he's like unbelievable. It's incredible. BYU Kansas Saturday, that'll be interesting. DeBonsa playing at Allen Fieldhouse.
Hopefully Peterson playing too. That could be 1 versus 2 in that game.
That would be nice if that happened. Did Peterson play this past weekend?
No, he had the ankle. He had the ankle.
Boy, I sure would like it if he played more college basketball.
Me too.
Just a humble request for Darren Peterson. But the good news is Melvin Council is available and honestly, playing a lot better than I thought he was early in the season. So shout out to Melvin Council, because he was number one on my list of like, I can see all the good stuff this guy does, but he drives me a little insane. And if I was a Kansas fan, he'd drive me super insane. But I think he's kind of like on the right side of the ledger. He's found the balance. So we'll see how that plays out. But hopefully Peterson can play. That'll be a marquee game.
They said optimistic that he will play. So that's good.
That'd be great. That's one of those games that, everybody will watch on Saturday.
For sure.
Especially now that we're in the full throes of this is college basketball season. We own Saturdays. The NFL is not even on this weekend. So we're in the thick of it now, and we'll be talking about the bubble, and we'll be talking about all kinds of good stuff in episodes to come. I think that'll do us for this week. It's halftime. I'm going to go watch the second half of this Arizona BYU game and report back tomorrow. But in the meantime, Tate, thanks very much once again for coming on.
Of course, man. Anytime.
It's great. Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. That's going to do it. Thank you to our producer, Corey Aldis. Thanks to Trilly and all the folks at Basket Under Review. We'll be back same time next week with another episode of the Basket Under Review podcast. Peace out, everybody. Bye-bye.